Today we have on Dr. Mary Claire Haver, and we are so excited that this huge celebrity, might be the biggest celebrity we've had on the show so far, on here to talk about all things women's health, hormone related. Tell us who you are today, and then we'll rewind and hear how you got started and what you're doing today.
Okay, so my name is Mary Claire Haver, and I am a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist. I'm also certified by the Menopause Society because OBGYN really doesn't have formal menopause education and certification.
I see you saying this a lot.
Yeah, and I'm also certified in something called culinary medicine, which is basically a nutrition certification for clinicians. So I've, wrapped up all of that knowledge, expertise, training into, I have several businesses now. I have my clinic, which is Mary Claire Wellness, and we employ now 5 nurse practitioners, and we do strictly menopause care for women. So we take care of women through perimenopause, postmenopause, through, and beyond, as long as they need us. We also have the Pause Nutrition, which includes our meals and our supplement company. My husband and I also own several rental properties throughout Galveston. We're always putting our hands in different enterprises.
Well, that's great to diversify. Sean's really into that too, so I'm sure he'll have a lot of questions about that. But yeah, I was wondering if you were still practicing now that you've gotten so busy and so famous with your books and traveling and doing PR and press. You were on the Today Show a few months back. I think you're going to be on again next week too.
Yes, next week.
So that is huge. Great for your business, great for your books. You guys may recognize her name tied to the Galveston Diet, which was her original book.
Right.
Tell us more about that if they haven't heard.
So I, in 2015, I kind of had a confluence of things that happened. I was going through perimenopause, and my brother passed away after a long kind of battle and illness. It was kind of dragged on for a long time, and then boom, he went very quickly at the end. So I was really struggling with the grief surrounding his death. And but I was also not sleeping and having joint pain and really struggling with mental health and depression. And I was gaining weight in places that I never had before.
And how old were you at this time?
So I was 48
Okay.
at the time. And I attributed a lot of that to my grief.
Yeah.
And certainly that was a part of it. But then once I realized the grief kind of fog was lifting, I was still really struggling with weight, mental health, just getting through the day, having to reprioritize my life. And then I started thinking, when was my last period?
Yeah.
Because I'd never had regular periods, so it really hadn't, dawned on me.
Well, also stress can cut that off too. I've been in situations like that where my body just stopped having periods.
Yeah. So, and then all of a sudden I realized, oh, wait, you might be in menopause. So I had to go and call my nurse practitioner who does my, woman exams and make an appointment just like everybody else and go and get my labs checked. And I was fully menopausal. And I thought, my God, this is my job. And I couldn't even diagnose this in myself. I'd actually probably gaslit myself for 6 months as to what was the cause of a lot of the symptoms that I was having. So I, started researching diet and nutrition and learned so much about more than just calories in, calories out. That's all they taught me in medical school was people have a weight problem because they're lazy or they haven't gotten, they're just eating too much and they're not exercising enough. Even today in modern, literature, you look to see, and they say, even in menopause literature, they'll say women tend to just move less as they, get older, as they go through menopause. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's me. I'm going to the gym 3 times a day. I've doubled down on my workouts. I am calorically restricting to the point of being dangerous. And sure, I'd lose a few pounds, but it would immediately come right back on. And especially in my midsection, I'm like, all of my patients are complaining of the same thing. And I worked in Galveston. I grew up, I did everything with these women. We worked out together, we went to church together, our kids all played together. I know their lifestyles and nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Except we're all going through menopause.
Yeah, I experienced that as well, where none of the little quick fix diets before vacation were working
anymore. All those tricks we used to do to lose 5 or 10 pounds suddenly
nothing works.
Stopped working. So I said, and I was getting more and more obsessed with it, really unhealthy behavior. My girls were teenagers at the time. So my sweet husband sat down and he was leaving for a work trip and he was going to be out of the country. And I said, when you get back, you're going to have the wife you deserve. Meaning I was going to really, really
get your shit together.
Yeah. And he looked at me and he said, babe, I notice you're getting up at night to pee, menopause. And you're weighing yourself. I can hear you stepping on the scale in the middle of the night. He said, your kids are watching, the girls are watching. Is this the kind of behavior you want them to model? You're always talking about food.
Nobody becomes an obsession, though.
Yeah, I was literally obsessed. And he's like, I love you. I don't care what size you are. You're beautiful. He said, but you're a scientist. Like, he kind of threw out a challenge. I bet you can figure this out. If it's not, what do you tell the girls? If it's not working, you need to change your behavior,
I think that's where most people think that they just chalk it up to aging. It's like, oh, maybe I'm just getting old. And so that's the biggest misconception now, is like all the science and technology and testing is here to actually go fix it and feel better. And I had the same path on the diet thing. Is like, I thought I was eating healthy. It's like, I eat healthy. And then I wasn't doing my macros right. Like, I wasn't getting all the right nutrients, and I was over exercising and messed up my hormones and did all kinds of damage. But I think it's a huge thing for people to hear, because the majority of people just think it's like, oh, I'm just getting old, and then that's it.
Chalk it up
and then
they
just give up, and because they think, oh, this is old, but it's
sit on
not.
their
You can live
couch,
a
they
really
don't stay
good life.
moving.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, this is just a part of getting old. This is how I should feel because I'm plus 45 or plus 50 or whatever the magical number is, and then they just deteriorate from there. Instead of going to do, what you guys are so good at now, is getting your hormone levels checked, periodically, whether that's once a month, once a quarter, just to stay on track to keep ahead of it, and then eating the right foods, not filling your body with trash.
People don't know where to start. And
they don't know where to start.
Yeah,
and I certainly did not have enough education and background to really give clinically relevant, advice to my patients at the time. So I went back to school and got the university I was working for to pay for it for me to get this culinary medicine certification. And I did about 18 months of deep dives into nutrition and training. And it was dietitians, it was internists, it was, an RD has 4-year undergraduate degree in nutrition science and then a master's degree, and then has usually worked at the hospital setting. So, and just blew me away that there's so many things that determine where and how we store fat, cortisol levels, how it affects every hormone in our body, GLP-1, for example. Yes. And so I was like, wait a minute, we're doing this all wrong. I can't resuscitate my ovaries, right? They're the aging process is taking all of our ovaries out before we die for 99.99% of women if we live long enough. But I can change how my body is reacting to this hormonal change. And so that was the basis of me developing the Galveston Diet. And it was really just a plan for me, right? It was, I got to fix myself. So I, went down, I kind of had 3 kind of arms that I developed. One was looking at the science around inflammation and intermittent fasting. So really the big red flag I kept seeing was inflammation, and inflammaging, which is the where, we are getting older, but we don't have to be a victim of our age, right?
That's exactly what Sean
has
been saying a lot too.
But as we age, inflammation levels go up. As our diets don't change with aging, inflammation levels go up. And as our hormones tank, inflammation levels go up. And I was like, okay, what can we do nutritionally to lower these inflammatory levels?
So what do you recommend people to do? Do you do like a food allergy test with them from the very beginning?
So
just to kind of find out
I have to rely on the clinical data from the diet, from the RDs and the PhD nutritionists who really don't put a lot of stock. And it's a lot to do with IgG and IgM. And, so I'm not doing routine allergy testing. I am doing nutritional marker testing. So we're looking at vitamin D. We're looking at, different high sensitivity C-reactive protein, homocysteine.
So is the vitamin D something you're consistently seeing, like as we age, decrease?
80% of my patients.
We're not spending enough time outside? Is our body just not breaking it down the same?
Multiple reasons. So one, our gut microbiome changes with not only with age, but with the loss of estrogen. Estrogen is a powerful mediator of the gut microbiome.
See, my estrogen is always through the roof. My vitamin D is always so low. So I don't know if it's my MTHFR.
So, yeah,
or me not spending enough time outside or.
So sun, women, we know that women who live in climates that don't have a lot of sunshine have lower vitamin D. People who have more pigment in their skin have lower vitamin D because they're not converting as much because they're not getting. But, we're all trying to protect our sun, rightfully so, against sun damage. So I'm always covered up. I've got my sunscreen on, but the price I'm paying for that is I'm not going to have as much vitamin D. So of all the supplements that I recommend, vitamin D is one because I think you should be able to protect your skin. It doesn't take that much time in the sun to get,
So what do you recommend? Like 15 minutes in the morning?
No more than 15 minutes. Okay. And I prefer like an early morning or even like the later afternoon because there's something about that red light in the evening. So I live on the island and I'm always running and my back porch faces the sunset. And so even, I see the sun starting when I'm home. and I run outside and sit on the porch so I can get my red light and, get a little bit of vitamin D naturally that way.
Don't tell Sean that. He's going to be sitting outside on the patio at 5 o'clock every evening too. He loves the red light stuff.
So I created this program with anti-inflammatory nutrition. So really looking at, what am I eating? Just because I was eating SnackWells and, all these things that said low fat, low this,
But that's what
low
I think
that.
most people think they're eating healthy. It's like, oh, I'm eating healthy.
Right.
But
I thought I was
they're
too.
really
I
not.
would have sworn up and down.
Me too. And my doctor's like, when he said, hey, we're going to do all this tests and, check your vitamin D levels and everything else. I was like, I eat healthy. And I was like, it's not going to help me that much. I have all these other issues. And then sure enough, like my vitamin D was super low. And then we pulled out a lot of foods that were causing inflammation. I felt
He was
10 times better.
a dozen eggs every single morning. So he's putting a dozen eggs in a blender with spinach, oatmeal, and almonds. And he's allergic to almonds and that many eggs.
Not
and
allergic, just
that,
sensitive. And so it was causing inflammation. So
So the other one of the
there's definitely
guests on our
things.
podcast that said that you just can't. He's like, we are in a natural environment, seasonally, supposed to be changing our diets. If you eat the same thing every single day, year round, it's not good for us. We're supposed to have that,
Variety.
a good variety is going to help with inflammation because too much of anything good can be inflammatory.
Exactly. So created Galveston Diet, started handing it out to my patients. Like I would make Xerox copies. Xerox, you tell how old I am, at the Office Depot around the corner in Galveston from my house, and was like, here, try this. And then the nurses got a hold of it in the hospital and everybody was sharing it. And
So
one
this
day,
before it was even a book. This
was like, here,
some basic
try
information.
my thing, And then I started talking about it on Facebook. And this was 2017, probably 2016. And all of a sudden, people are sharing that information, and my Facebook presence was growing all around me talking about this little nutrition plan that I had created. So I thought, what if let me make these the private groups had started in Facebook. Let me make groups, because I'm also sharing pictures of my kids.
Yeah.
It got kind of weird. Then I created a page so that, I could kind of separate my family stuff from this kind of growing presence of people wanting to know about the nutrition plan. And in these private groups, I would ask for volunteers, who wants to try my little program for free? And I would go in for a month with these groups and teach them the basic concepts of the program, anti-inflammatory nutrition. At the time, I was a huge fan of fasting. I'm kind of like still a fasting fan, but I've backed off a little bit. And looking at macronutrients, what we call fuel refocusing, and not just calories in, calories out. We actually advise people for the first time in my life not to count calories. And so several physicians, because that was kind of my friend group, joined the plan and were giving me back really great advice. So I did that for like a year, month after month after month, kind of grow it for free, just growing it, learning like what nuances I needed to teach. And finally, a couple of the physicians in these groups were entrepreneurs, and they were like, hey, because I was still a full-time employee at the university, and you should turn this into something. You should, someone's going to take it from you. It's getting so big. By that point, I had thousands and thousands of people doing this. So I was like, okay. So I tried an ebook first, and that was a disaster, a failure. Like no one, because it was me teaching, and my personality and my voice really seemed to be the magic than me just, I tend to like write.
Oh, so it was like a video ebook type thing. Okay.
No, so the ebook was just
Written,
right? But what was really drawing people in was me. My voice explaining, the video part of it. So then someone said, hey, why don't you try one of those online courses? Because then you can put your videos in there and have the written information, because everyone learns differently. So I said, okay, let me try that. And that, for me, for the Galveston Diet, was the magic. So within
people could get memberships to...
So it wasn't a membership, it was a one-time fee.
Okay.
One-time
fee where they could have access to you, your videos, and...
Yeah, so it was like a video book, right? So it shocked the heck out of me, because by the end of the year, and that first year, I had made $20,000 selling a $19 course. Okay. And I was like, whoa, this is, that's vacation. I mean, that's paying taxes and whatever. And by the end of the next year, I had replaced my salary plus as an OBGYN. I had to hire people to help me.
So how the hell were you managing all of this and a family?
Well, I was having
your kids you have two children.
Yeah,
so
I had two kids at home. My husband was still working overseas. So he was gone a month at a time. So he did a 28 on, 28 off schedule. So here I am sitting in bed at 10 o'clock at night answering questions. So I just had to hire people as the money was coming in from people joining the course. And it was not a subscription. This was a one-time fee. But I was having so much fun. And I kept feeling like, this is what you're meant to do. You're meant to teach at this level. And on the other hand, the administrative burden of my job at the hospital was getting worse and worse and worse. They were demanding more hours, less pay. And I kind of made a game time decision. I think I'm going to leave this job that I've loved, that I've spent 20 years at, and take a chance. And I didn't want to give up hospital privileges or my surgical privileges. So let me go and do this part-time job as a hospitalist. And it was at Memorial Hermann Southeast. So right south of Houston, south of where we are, right there. And I can work more part-time and then kind of play with my little online business while I do that. So then I joined that hospital, and then COVID hit. So I've never worked more, longer, harder hours. So happy to be part of a solution at that time. And the diet sales went in the tank the first 6 months. No one at that time, right? We were all at home and eating SnackWells.
Exactly the opposite
we were
during that time.
drinking
Well,
alcohol.
it did probably after that, like soon after.
So
I'm sure
then,
it took off.
so that we had this boom lull, and I'm like, well, that was fun, you know,
while it lasted.
But then all of a sudden, it started growing again. And
when was that? Would you say like late 2020?
Late 2020. So like the first, like March, April, May, maybe June of COVID, we saw this huge slump in sales. And then it started picking back up, and the social media presence started growing. So when I had downtime at the hospital, like when no one needed me, because I was a hospitalist, I didn't have office hours, right? I just waited for people to come in. I would research and make videos. I was having so much fun. And when the patients came in, I put it away and I went to work.
Yeah, you're proof that you don't need big fancy videos and a huge
No,
production
I built
team.
a
People
social media
love that
empire
yes.
from my phone in scrubs with no makeup.
Yeah.
You know, like just teaching.
Not even always the best lighting, but you just talking at the camera. And that's what people like, is that it's authentic and it's you and it's real.
That, and if you can create value. And so if you can create value for somebody.
And I had value. And at the same time, we're still just offering this course that is a one-time fee. And then we had a coaching like upgrade option just for another month, right? And so we had over 100,000 people buy into the course.
And the hospital at this point never thought it was a conflict of
No,
interest?
I mean, I
or
was
anything,
very
or-
upfront with
Okay.
everybody. They were all fine as long as
Okay,
I
good.
wasn't, you know, impinging on my duties, and I didn't identify as being an employee of that institution.
Yes.
I was fine. So it was fine. And I did most of it at home, right? But on the day when I had 6 hours of nothing happening at the hospital, which happens, I would like do research and talk about an article, you know, that I had read. So then someone I had worked with in a previous life had some inroads in a supplement company. Now, remember, I'm talking about nutrition all day, every day, and weight gain and menopause and why it happens, and inflammation and visceral fat. And then I was saying, you know, we need more fiber, we need more vitamin D. And I was recommending XYZ
brands,
company, different brands that I would like spend all this time going to research. Do they have third-party testing? So in my research of how to pick a good supplement company, I learned what it took to build a good supplement company. And then I had the courage to make my own, which
you
I
know
knew
exactly what's going in it, and you can feel
Yeah,
good
but
about
then-
what you recommend.
I was
Yeah,
like,
but then
these
you just
patients
know.
were coming in with buckets
too much,
of
yeah.
stuff. And I was like, okay, what's even in some of these supplements? Why are you taking this? And some of them were so packed with artificial colors and flavors and fillers. And I was like, I think I can do this and like give my patients and my followers
And simplify it. Yeah.
and really good, solid, you know, I knew I would get shade as a physician selling supplements. I knew that was a road that I would, you know, I knew that was a line that people would consider I have crossed something ethical. But I thought, I think I can do this in an ethical way and give good, high quality, you know, why am I making Thorne all this money? Why am I making all these companies when I can make my own, put exactly what I want in it, formulate it to the exact specifications that I want, and then have a source for my patients and followers. So we launched the supplement company, and it was a little bit shocking to me that within a year, I realized people were 10 to 50 times more likely to buy a bottle of something from me
Because they trust you and they know that you know
than
what's
a
in it, yeah.
nutrition plan.
Well, also they've already bought in with all your education and your book and everything else. It almost sells somebody through information,
Right.
and help. And then it's easy to sell them again on a supplement once they trust you,
Right.
or they got results off the diet. It's like, well, I've already got results off this. For sure, I'm going to trust it.
And I, you know, I'm not selling menopause cures. I'm not saying this will cure your menopause. I'm like, most women in menopause don't have enough vitamin D. Here you go.
Yeah.
Most women in menopause aren't getting enough fiber. I hope you can get it through your diet.
We
But
help the
if
symptoms,
you
but it's not
can't,
going to eliminate it. Yeah.
right. So has been my approach, and it's been extraordinarily successful. Then the Random House called and said, hey, and I had to like vet that they were actually them and it wasn't a scam.
Yeah.
As I was telling you earlier. And they said, hey, you know, have you ever thought about writing a book about your program? And I was very nervous that a book might parasitize what we had built with our online program. Because again, you weren't in subscription. This was a one-time fee. And if there's a book available, which we usually run $20, $30 versus what was then probably a $79 program, which one would you pick?
Yeah.
You know? And so, but the supplement company was doing well. And I thought, you know what? I just want to get this information in the right hands. So as we were writing the book, I kept finding myself leaning more into just data on menopause in general than just the nutrition and weight gain part of it. Because it's more than just weight gain in menopause. It's body composition change is the most important thing. Females are losing muscle at accelerated rates.
What do you think about the GLP-1s?
I'll get to that. So
I'm sure this is a huge challenge for you to get people to. That's why I'm drinking this right now because I'm on that.
I'm the same. Because
I'm like trying to get my protein.
That's 40 grams? Damn.
Yes, I know. That's why I love it. I hate the monk fruit because it gives me the worst taste in my mouth all day. But it's 40 grams is what gets me like a third of the way.
But we decided to go for it, and the book was a national bestseller and did really, really well. But what I learned was, I was ready to I've done the nutrition part. I really want to like open the door on menopause in general. So I started from all that publicity, getting invited to these menopause conferences. And I was meeting all these other providers that kind of followed on social media who were like me teaching in the space and realizing this is really where I want to be. Like, I don't want to just be talking about diet. I don't like the diet culture. I don't like kind of that connotation. I think menopause is a much bigger picture than weight gain. We're talking about the gender health gap. We're talking about osteoporosis. We're talking about, even though we live longer than our male counterparts, like you will live longer than him statistically,
Probably true anyways.
I always say I'm like, he eats so
However,
healthy, I still eat.
you won't be healthier. We don't have a health span to match our lifespan where they do, where men generally do. And that is a huge teaching point for me. Muscle mass. Yeah. Muscle mass and bone strength and cognitive. And so now, when my patients come into clinic, I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but when my patients come into clinic, and we're putting out the menopause fire, the hot flashes, the night sweats. We got to get them sleeping, Then we try to build a better body that's going to support them for the next 30 years. And usually the body they walk into is not likely to do that because of low muscle mass and higher visceral fat. So, and then we start looking at macros, nutrition profiles, to order to help her develop a plan, and plus or minus hormone therapy if she's a candidate, if she wants it. To help her, let's get her to a place where she can age as healthy as possible.
We had a friend at one of her friends at our house yesterday. I think she was, how old was the lady at our house yesterday? 50?
My age, or 56.
Yeah, and she was saying the same thing. She was going through menopause, and she's like, I've had all these issues. I'm super tired. I can't figure out why I'm still gaining weight. And it was all the same stuff.
And here's the other problem. So I did 4 years at a beautiful medical school, super proud of everything I learned. But in 4 years of medical school, I think maybe I got 1 hour on menopause. Yeah, we spend 30 to 40% of our lives as menopausal people. And there's
no talk about it.
No talk about it. Yeah. And so then I go to OB-GYN residency, right? I'm the expert in women's health. I got maybe 6 hours in 4 years.
It's insane.
So,
do you think medical school today spends more time on it, or still you think?
So, my daughter's in medical school in Galveston at UTMB, and she says not much.
I heard the same thing. My business partner, his son's in medical school, and he's same thing. He asked him questions like, "Hey, are you going over this? Are you going to this?" He's like, "No."
Yeah,
it's a traditional system that hasn't caught up.
We still are in a sick care model for most of health.
I'm hoping, we'll have a big change on that.
And forever the research in menopause was on hot flashes because you can't blame anything else on a hot flash except maybe tuberculosis, and we can rule that out quickly.
But is that hormone related? Is that what causes it? Yeah, is that hormone related?
So what we know is that estrogen stabilizes the thermoregulatory center in the brain, and when we lose, estrogen is a really powerful anti-inflammatory hormone, as is probably testosterone, and progesterone has its own effects. And we have estrogen receptors in our entire bodies. So brain, heart, kidneys, lung, gut, everything, muscles, bone. And in the brain, we see like across the menopause transition, which is perimenopause. So from normal menstrual cycles to where Gentry is right now, you go into a zone of chaos.
Yeah, our friend yesterday mentioned, she goes, never had anxiety in my life, and now I have a bunch of anxiety.
Well, I gave her some L-theanine for the first time.
I know, but she had brought up, she was like, I've started taking, antidepressant stuff because that's what they put me on, right? And they're not treating the actual root cause of what's going on. They're just like, oh, just take this. You'll feel a little bit better. And so
yeah,
that's
depression
the
is
problem.
not a Prozac deficiency. I saw Mark Hyman post that the other day. So that's what I was taught to do. She's depressed, give her an antidepressant. Okay. Lots of women will still need an antidepressant no matter what we do.
But it should tell you that she's never had it in her life, and then all of a sudden she has it. Like, that
the
doesn't just happen.
root cause is
Something happened.
changes.
Yeah, something
It should
changed.
be try everything else first. Try your diet. Try the exercise. Try the supplements. Try balancing your hormones. And if all else fails, then move to that.
But if the normal I know, but they don't know where to start. That's the issue with everybody. It's like, well, I'm gonna go to the doctor. I don't feel good. I'm having anxiety. Something's wrong with me. I didn't ever feel this way before. And then they go and they're like, well, just take this. And they do no testing. They might have done labs, maybe. But then that's it, right? And then, then you just get in this cycle of never.
We don't have a test for perimenopause.
That's why you're accountant.
It's just kind of a guessing game when you look at the, your estrogen seems low.
But that's actually all you need to do to diagnose perimenopause is listen to a woman and believe her.
Yeah.
You can make the diagnosis. That's what we do in clinic. So there's no because it's a really, really roller coaster of hormone fluctuations in peri, LH, FSH, estradiol, and progesterone. It's unpredictable from day to day what it's going to be. So listening to the patient, believing her. I do a ton of blood work for our patients in peri, but I'm ruling out other causes, hypothyroidism, inflammatory disorders, autoimmune disease, because a lot of stuff can overlap or look the same. So I want to make sure that's not what's going on. Like you said, try everything else, and then that's the cause. And then we start talking about treatment options.
My doctor said he sees about 80% women. Functional medicine guy's been that way his whole career. And he said that women are so hard because it takes a lot longer to get everything balanced than a man. A man's like, 2-3 months, you're feeling pretty good.
You go high,
pretty good, yeah. And then a woman, he said it takes a lot of, and it's like very small changes and very small changes.
I tell my patients in perimenopause, this may work for 6 months, a year, 2 years.
That's what he said.
Your body chemistry changes
You're
again.
still changing in the background. And I show them the charts of when we looked at urinary estriol levels in perimenopausal women, then the LH and the FSH. And, I'm like, I just posted on Instagram today. Here's the chart. So we have to navigate this. And the best we can probably do is take you out of the really high highs and the really low lows and let you fluctuate between here, which is kind of what we did in premenopause, right? You had this very EKG-like ebb and flow of hormones if we were healthy. I was a PCOS patient, so that was never me. But for most women who have normal, regular menstrual cycles that don't bother them and they can just get on with their lives and function, on day 14, she's going to do this. Day 28, she's going to do this. Yeah. The brain is used to that pattern. The gut's used to that pattern. We live day to day to day, right? In perimenopause, all of that goes haywire. Why? Because women are born with all of our eggs, and that is our lifetime supply.
Yep.
Men make their stuff fresh every day from puberty until death.
90.
And it gets harder for you guys, but it's still possible. Whereas when you go through full menopause, if you choose not to replace your hormones, which we can have a chat about that later, your estradiol level will be less than his. Your testosterone level for sure will be less.
Maybe not anymore because I'm taking testosterone. If you notice my voice.
So am I. But if you just raw dogged it and went through and said, you know what, I want to be natural, I'm going to do the nutrition route, whatever your choice is, and I fully support that. Just know that his estradiol levels are going to be higher than yours. You go down to less than 1% of the levels that you ran as a premenopausal person.
I have one 2-part question for you. Do you feel like, because I'm going to ask both and then you can answer both because they probably are related. Do you feel like women are coming in to see you at younger ages than ever before?
Younger and older. I'm seeing women coming into our clinic who are 30s to 40s, who are just beginning to have symptoms, but they really want to get ahead of this. They want to make a plan. They want to be, maximize everything they can before the rug gets pulled out. And these women usually have a mother or a family member that had a horrific menopause or are suffering from osteoporosis or dementia. They're like, I want to be proactive as possible. So age of menopause is affected by many things. Genetics is huge. Okay. So if your mom, your grandma, all your aunts went through really young, you should be on guard for that. However, there are things we can do to speed up losing your ovaries, right? Smoke. People who smoke will go through menopause 2 to 3 years sooner. Hysterectomy, leaving the ovaries behind, 4 years on average.
So my mom had that too. So that's why she went through it late 30s, because I think she had hysterectomy.
So we disrupt just enough blood flow to the ovary to keep it alive, but you have a much faster deterioration rate. I mean, the younger you are when having your hysterectomy, the younger you are when you go through menopause.
Do you see any correlation between people who did IVF and it's sparking it faster? Because
little bit depends how many rounds you did. Depends, because you are hyperstimulated. Every ovulation to get that one egg, you lose 10,000. That's in a normal cycle. Imagine what's happening to your ovaries in IVF.
Oh, I had,
and I have 2 fertility babies.
I had hyperstimulation where my entire torso filled up with blood. So I had a really bad egg withdrawal that literally made me feel so close to death, where ringing in my ear and my shoulders. And I didn't go to the hospital because I don't go to the hospital unless I'm dying. I know. And Sean has never been so scared. Like at that very moment, it was about maybe.
I tried to wake up and take her at like 1 o'clock in the morning, but she goes, no. I
couldn't even get my underwear on. Like I can't even imagine riding in the car with bumps. It hurts so bad to even breathe.
The blood in your
my
abdomen
was competing with space.
Was rubbing up on your diaphragm, which was causing the shoulder pain. That's referred
all the way up to the ear. My ear was
phrenic
ringing.
Nerve. Yeah.
It was the worst experience. And I try to warn everybody, read your paperwork, because I didn't. I signed something saying I understood what hyperstimulation was.
I just want a baby.
It happened. And about a week later, a goose egg came out of my lady parts of all of the blood that, was needing to expel itself. It was the most painful thing. But what I was going to say earlier is I didn't start IVF till I was 37, just because I wanted to, wait a little bit longer before we started a family. And I thought maybe we should just freeze some eggs, which turned into your geriatric pregnancy or geriatric eggs, whatever. So we need to freeze embryos, which turned into, well, what if those 2 embryos that we froze don't work? Then you may not have a chance if you wait till you're in your 40s. But I didn't take a single supplement or pill before that. Everything was always in line. I didn't have any thyroid issues. For eating McDonald's and Taco Bell every day, I was pretty fucking healthy. After that, you should see my shit that I take every day. But everything has been thrown off, and it was, after I had my kid. It was after the
pregnancy where it got pretty bad.
Pregnancy is not a health neutral event, and women need to stop thinking that. Yeah. Menopause is not a health neutral event. Our leaving hormones out of the equation when we're talking about women's health, and when I hear the health bros and I know you're a bro, but when I hear what we call them longevity bros in my world, and some are better than others for sure, and there's a lot of great data out there, but if you're not talking about hypogonadism in the female, which otherwise known as menopause. Imagine if your testicles shriveled up and died at age 50, which is what is happening to us. I
hear it a lot from my doctor.
Everything in your world. He's no cold bath, no sauna, no red light will make a fucking minute difference if you don't address what's going on with your testosterone. That's what's happening to us.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never felt
we
better.
can survive without hormones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
but it's hard. And you don't, you can be healthy without hormone therapy, but it's harder. And for me, looking at my mother and my grandmother and how the women in my family age, I would prefer to stack the cards in my favor.
Everybody I talk to, so, my cousin's probably 55-ish, 57. And so, everybody I talk to, they're like, hey, we heard about this and we heard about this and we heard about hormones, but we don't know where to go. And these are pretty well-to-do people that probably know their friends are probably all doctors, and they still don't know. And they still. So I think that's the biggest issue. And I think a little bit with social media and people like you bring awareness. That's why you've done so well, because people are like, oh, that's what was happening to me, and then they go and you can fix it. And so most people just don't know where to start. Is what I've found the most of is like, hey, you don't have to feel that way anymore.
Right.
Like this is available, this is available, this is available, and that's where people they have no idea.
What I say to patients is you deserve to feel great.
Yes.
I am 56. I'm living my best life.
Probably feel better than you when you were 30.
35-year-old Mary Claire was a train wreck.
Yeah.
Working 100-hour weeks, raising 2 kids, husband overseas all the time. I was thin. Okay, I thought thin meant healthy.
Yeah.
I was chipping away at my bone and muscle strength and probably my cognition, by too many Diet Coke, or Diet Dr. Pepper actually was my drug of choice, too much alcohol, too many late nights, to not enough sleep. Like I wasn't building a resilient body to really get me through menopause. And if I could, when I talk to my daughters, if I could go back and talk to 30-year-old Mary Claire, it's like, stop doing so much cardio, eat some protein, get your sleep, treat your sleep with your life. Like that is your lifeline. So when we're building a menopause toolkit, like an aging toolkit for women, it is a toolkit. It is nutrition, getting adequate protein, anti-inflammatory nutrition, lots of leafy greens, nuts, seeds, limiting processed foods as much as possible. It is adequate movement. So 150 minutes a week of cardio, but at least 2 to 3 days of lifting. Now, in my clinic, I have a body scanner, so I'm able to do their body composition, muscle mass, visceral fat.
Which one are you? You're not using the DEXA one, are you? Is it just the
No,
in-body?
that's my dream,
the
but
in-body-
right now it's
is
the
it-
highest level in-body.
Okay, yeah, that's what most of people use. I was just curious of
Yeah.
what you're using.
So DEXA, we have DEXA Fit in the Houston area, so we have a relationship with them. If I really feel like a patient needs a DEXA and they can't get insurance to cover it, it's $99, and it's really worth the investment.
That's actually great.
Yeah. And they'll do body composition there as well. So shout out to DEXAFit. Yeah.
The good thing now
They
is
don't pay me.
when people see the data, though, they go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know it was
so
that
when
bad."
I
Right?
show them graphically
Yes, it's
what
like-
this looks like and what their path, and we look at
And the
all their
visceral fat
labs
and
and we
everything
go
else,
through
yeah.
it together, they're like, okay, I see it now.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like it's like there's something clicks in their head, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't keep doing the same stuff I was doing."
Exactly.
So now we're talking about protein intake. I don't think people really take that serious. They hear it, they're like, yada, yada, yada. But especially right now with the craze
Right.
of all the Ozempic
Some
and
days
the
I
trizepatide.
feel like, so I do use GLP-1s in my practice. So GLP-1s are like the blanket term for the Ozempic, the Mounjaro, the tirzepatide, and semaglutide. So when our patients come in for their menopause visit, we address all of that first. We bring them back. We give them a nutrition plan, exercise recommendations. They come back in 3 months. We redo their body scan. And if their visceral fat is still up and they're really struggling, then we start talking about adding in a GLP-1. But that's a whole nother hour visit because we're counseling about protein intake, resistance training, all the lifestyle changes. And there's something magical for some patients about these medications where they are able for the first time to stick to the lifestyle changes.
I can tell you why, from a true food addict.
Tell me why.
It shuts off the noise in my head. Because when you have a true eating addiction, like me, you can ask Sean, obsessed with food, I could never stick to a, quote, diet plan or healthy eating. I'm too obsessed with cheese, mostly, that I can't go without it. By the third day, I'm just fucking pissed off. Not fun to be around. I can't get through that obstacle in my head of the obsession of having to have queso. I'm going on the second year, maybe even past second year. I started with semaglutide. Now I'm on trizepatide. Way happier with trizepatide.
Most
less
of my patients
nausea.
are happier with tirzepatide.
I'd never even heard of it until I switched to my new doctor.
Right.
He's like, why aren't you taking trizepatide? I'm like, I'm always on semaglutide.
We
now.
seem to have less side effects with that
I think
one.
so too. Less nausea. But something has been turned off. Now the switch in the beginning was completely dialed all the way down. And I told Sean, I said, this is maybe a bad comparison, but this is the best way I can describe this in my head. You think either a sex addict, right? Even someone who maybe molests children, a terrible human. You can put them in prison for 10 years, but you take them out, they go right back to that. It's an addiction in their head.
Right.
That's how it is with food. The second I stop taking it, that switch gets turned back on and I can't stop. But I take it at the very lowest dose and it just dials it down. Now it's not, I feel like I can enjoy
She almost
food
tastes
again.
like a lower than low dose. She's like
Yeah.
on a micro, like it's less than the starting dose.
And I can enjoy food again. In the beginning, alcohol tasted disgusting to me. I'm like, now I see what people could use this for addiction purposes. This makes sense to any kind of type of addiction. And hopefully one day maybe that could be a solution. I don't know. But what I feel
They are
like,
studying it for that.
I keep
class of
reading this
medication.
and I'm like, I can see that, right? So my addiction is food, but I make cleaner choices because I don't have that obsession or that draw to, if I don't have this, whether it be a Trill burger or queso, I don't feel like I'm going to die or stab someone's throat out for not getting what my mind is telling me I have to have. But I did get off of it recently for about 2 or 3 weeks just to kind of see. And the snack attacks came
right back on.
Like before I go to bed, I'm like, Sean, he used to get up and make me a cheese and meat tray right into bed. But one thing I want to say really quick before we move on is that a lot of doctors aren't taking the time to explain protein. So I talk about this a lot at work. I'm face to face with people for an hour or two and, oh, you look great and you look like you lost some weight. And I'm like, well, trizepatide saved my life and and people who are on it, their doctors never mention protein intake. And they're like, well, doesn't it make your hair fall out?
They
And I'm like,
didn't know. They
absolutely,
don't
if I'm
know.
not taking my protein.
Well, it goes
those-
back to the non-nutrition doctors. Like,
Right.
oh, just take this, you
Here,
lose weight.
take
So people
this,
aren't
and
going
they're
for the
not
part.
They're not able to, or they don't have the time. My employer was giving me 10 or 12 minutes to see a patient, and half of that was in stirrups. Yeah. And so how am I possibly going to be able to counsel someone adequately
know exactly what's happening in their life and listen to their
Right.
symptoms and actually,
Yeah.
I went
But
through all that too.
I've seen my patients' cardiometabolic risks plummet with this medication, and I'm so happy for them. I'm thrilled for them. my own family members.
Yeah. My doctor tells me all the time, he's like, it's actually one of the best things we've seen in a while.
It's another form of hormone replacement.
Yes.
GLP-1 is a hormone we make a lot more of when we're younger.
Yep. It's just a peptide.
But I just hope anyone who's listening to this, that their doctor did not push the importance of protein.
Or like somehow you're morally superior if you are
take
able to
it.
lose weight
Yeah.
without taking it. Like
So-
we don't have that kind of talk in my office.
Yeah. It's also, I think people are thinking it's an easy way out, and it's not.
No,
it just helps
it's
you make a
work.
lifestyle
It's
change.
different
Or
work.
they just stop eating, or they're doing too much or whatever.
Certainly we have those patients.
So that's the only
who
problem.
come in and they're coming in and their muscle mass is slid off the chart. I'm like,
And that's where they
and
get,
they
it gets
know
the bad rap. is
we will
because
stop
of-
prescribing it because we're now increasing your risk.
My doctor says that's the only downside. He said the only downside that I've seen out of all my patients is a woman, they won't listen to you even know how much you tell them. They'll come in a little bit malnutritioned. And he said that's the downside. Is like, but that's it. Everything else, like inflammation and everything, is way down. And so he's like, we just spend the extra time like you do, like really reassuring,
the
like
importance.
this is, you
we put
have
them
to
on the
do
scanner
this.
and they see
Yeah.
the loss of muscle mass and it scares them because
Yeah.
now we've
glad you
increased
do
your
that.
risk of osteoporosis and frailty
Yeah.
by 50%.
So what are the 2 or 3 biggest things that you see on someone who that you know is malnutritioned because they're not following the plan appropriately?
Muscle
what would
loss.
you show? Okay,
So
muscle
I'm
loss.
able to track muscle loss, which is special. Not every clinic has
Yeah.
that ability. So muscle loss,
hair loss.
yeah, hair loss. And it depends on the rate at which they lose the weight. If they're losing it quickly, you'll see the skin, you know. But that usually does rebound, but it's going to take a while. Like they'll come in distress because their skin's hanging when they've lost the subcutaneous fat quickly. And it just takes a minute for some to see how much elasticity you're going to get back in the skin.
He even said he has a bunch of autoimmune patients that they take a ultra low dose, not for really weight loss, but for inflammation. He said it's helped him a ton. And so
I'm excited
it's
see.
pretty amazing.
I think we're going to see because obesity is a risk for breast cancer, it's a risk for colon cancer, it's a risk for almost every cardiometabolic disease and cancer. And I am so curious. We're already seeing in the last year, the age of death has decreased. Like we're seeing on a population scale, and they think it's due to the widespread use of GLP-1s that we're seeing the population.
It has to be. Think about
slowly
it.
Get healthier.
It's like the worst, the 2 worst things, or the worst killers is
Right.
like obesity and
I
heart
wish
disease, right?
we didn't
Diabetes
live in
and
an
heart disease.
obesogenic society, but we do.
It is.
You know,
Easy
And the
access
food
to
thing and everything
processed
else
food.
has just gotten so bad. At least all the people that I've known start taking it, even if they weren't working out right away, they start seeing changes,
That.
and then they get like
They get to the gym.
all in.
I've never seen them stick to the lifestyle changes.
The 4 or
better.
5 people I know that have lost a ton, they get like, they see all these changes, they feel better, and they're like, oh my God, I feel great when I work out. And so then it just gets better and better and better and better.
What do
all
you
the
think the
people
future is
I've seen-
going to be with processed food? What do you think we're going to see in the next 4 to 10
yeah,
years?
I mean,
So
that would be-
I think that there's really clear messaging. You know, I live on social media now, and every morning I spend about an hour just taking the pulse of what's going on. Now, take the election out of it and all the drama around that, but you know, when you just look at what the clear messaging is, there is not one single person other than Kellogg's saying that processed food is good for you. So I think everyone's getting the message.
Okay. That's
Now
what I
they're
keep saying,
trying to
too.
figure out, you know, there are people that live in food deserts. You know, when you look at our general population, it's one thing. I'm privileged to be able to make these choices. I'm privileged to be able to have access to food and money to go and pay out of pocket to see a doctor and afford these medications. What I would love to see is, you know, what I'm advocating for on a national level is we need policy changes.
Yeah.
We need laws to change. We
be more
need
EU
policing
compliant,
of these processed food companies and what they can and what they can't say. But also we need access for people, regular, normal Americans living in Ohio, sitting on the couch confused and not knowing what to do, for them to be able to afford healthy food. Because guess what? McDonald's is cheap. You know, a hamburger's $2, $3, you know, so... I don't want to demonize a hamburger or
Yeah.
McDonald's, but it's, you know, I think for me, if I don't leave this world democratizing access to healthy food, hormone therapy if people want it, GLP-1s, you know, doing whatever I can do with whatever power that I've got, I think I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, I agree. And I see it happening even in cosmetics too, not just food, what we're putting in our body and on our body. I'm hoping that we can become more EU compliant because I feel like they just have such great laws and regulations there. And hearing what's all over the internet now, it's like what's in Fruit Loops here versus what's in Fruit Loops there. And why
Right,
are
when
we
you look at
allowed
the-
to put all these things. I mean, these are just lobbyists pushing to have these things to keep us sicker.
I think there's enough people now to where if it's going to hit their sales, then they make the change,
It
right?
has to be the economics.
Yeah, so now it's like, oh, this might impact our sales. let's change this. And it takes something like that, I think, to make a change. If not, they're just going to keep making money, right? I mean, that's just part of a corporation.
And preying on really the weakest of us.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, that's kind of where I'm at too, though, in the same boat as you, is whenever I turned 35, kind of everything fell apart. And luckily I found, a doctor similar to you, and really changed my life. And so I'm kind of in the same boat. It's like, if I can help as many people to avoid all the stuff that I went through, I would feel pretty good about myself, in 10, 20 years.
So as my presence on social media grew and, getting invited to conferences with bigger and bigger names, people I'd and getting phone calls and pulled aside in a corner to just ask me a quick question. These people have unlimited access. I can only imagine to what would be considered the finest care in the world, and they still are confused. They still want to ask me questions. A little doctor from Galveston, with a big social media following. And we just have so much work to do,
Yeah, we do. And then, like I said, before we started the podcast too, it's practicing medicine for a reason. I mean, just like anything else.
Yeah, it cannot be a cookie cutter approach.
And what my doctor says is, I can't come in for our first 1 hour consultation and tell you exactly what we're going to do. It's going to fix it, put a Band-Aid on it. Every single woman is different. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs something different. Everybody reacts to something different. We'll be testing you once every month or two and kind of seeing what works and what didn't. And I get better and I learn more from seeing your results. And I think really taking the time, and I know, like you said, not every doctor can do that. It's like sometimes concierge medicine is just the way you have to go with this. And
right.
Unfortunately, it's expensive, and hopefully in the future it'll drive down the cost of that a little bit more. But when you're working with insurance and you could only have 15 minutes a patient, you do what you do, and you hand out the brochures, and they may or may not read it.
OBGYN, the hospital's making money off of you when you're doing procedures and doing surgeries and delivering babies. They kind of allow you to see patients so that you can get more people into the OR. And I couldn't be a martyr to that system anymore.
That's
being up all night,
really
3-4 nights a week was killing me. Yeah. And then seeing patients all day. And it's just this medical model that we have isn't built to serve the clinicians for sure.
No.
But it's also not built to serve a woman really after reproduction. So we're okay at OB. I think we're trying hard. And I was a really good obstetrician. But stepping away from that allowed me to have the time and the space to be able to focus on menopause.
I think also the traditional system is super messed up, and you go all the way through medical school and then the pharmaceuticals, and that's how you get paid. So it's really going to be tough to change. And where most people, I think, have an issue is the people are in the same boat. They're used to the traditional system. It's like, well, I only go to the doctor when I get sick. And then they don't look at it as an investment. They look at it as an expense. And so it's like,
right.
It's $300 or, whatever the number is. And they're like, I don't know. But then they'll go spend $300 at a dinner. It's like on one dinner. So people are still looking at it as like an expense. And
that's a great way to put it. They don't see
it is.
their
And
health
they're like,
as
oh
an
my gosh, that's
investment.
expensive. It's like, hold on. So
as an expense.
You're going to spend your money on all this other stuff. And you could feel like 100 times better.
I could look at somebody's monthly spend and cut
I could fix
$300
it. Yeah,
in Starbucks
I
a month.
could fix all of it. And also, especially 40 plus people, you don't know how good you can actually feel. And I think that's where a lot of people are like, it's an expense. I go to the doctor. I got sick that one time. It cost me $200, even with insurance, whatever the number was. And that's the problem too. So you have the traditional medical system, but then you have the traditional way of thinking. Who
really isn't trained much in prevention.
No.
I was taught nutrition, good nutrition was like porn. You know it when you see it, right? The Supreme Court definition of pornography. It's like, well, and until I went back to school and got trained and went to experts and worked with dietitians and nutritionists.
People are seeing that now. They're learning this. They're seeing what the whole horse and pony show is about. It's about slapping more medicine on it to make everybody more money, not healing you and doing it the right way that we all believe in.
I do like
finding the source of the problem and balancing and healing.
Yeah, there's a ton of information that's coming out, and thanks to people like you, because now people are like, oh, okay, that's what was happening to me, and you can actually fix it.
Right.
It's not like I went to the doctor and then they just gave me some medicine, like the lady yesterday. They just gave me an antidepressant, and she probably would have just been that way over the next 5-10 years, right? Without knowing the right person to see.
The numbers around this are kind of astonishing. Women's health, the menopause really took a back seat in this one landmark study, the Women's Health Initiative, that came out in 2002. So that's now 22 years ago when the study was released. Most of the findings have been reworked, debunked. It was really blown out of proportion that, estrogen caused breast cancer. So the hysteria around that announcement really stopped any meaningful research in women's health after reproduction, for 20 years. And we're just now kind of coming out from that and seeing, Marty Macary's book, if you've read Blind Spots, incredible. So chapter 2 is all all about women's health and the Women's Health Initiative and kind of what happened. And, maintaining healthy estrogen levels, we know from studies, women who are on HRT versus those who aren't tend to have less heart attacks and die less and live longer and have much stronger bones and much stronger genital urinary systems. And
my
somehow
estrogen is always through the roof.
Well, you're in perimenopause, so that
I take DIM, which helps.
That is one of the things we see in peri. Is one of the fluctuations is you end up screaming higher than you ever had in your premenopausal years, and you get these big drops and it pops back up because the stimulating hormones, because the brain's going nuts trying to figure out where
literally
where the ovaries just can't respond in a normal way because you've lost so many eggs.
So what raises cortisol level then?
Well, we know stress does. So just being menopausal makes you stressed, and so cortisol levels are raised by lack of sleep, by external stresses coming in, so part of one of the pillars of treatment that we talk to our patients about is taking care of yourself first, whether that be prayer, meditation, journaling, therapy, but taking that time to slow down the racing brain, all of the anxiety. So anxiety is one of the things that raises your cortisol higher than anything. We're meant to have some anxiety. It kept us able to run away from tigers and things that were trying to chase us. We needed those bursts of adrenaline, which then raises our cortisol, so we have glucose ready to run. But now in modern times, we've taken away that, the saber-toothed tigers aren't chasing us anymore. But now what's chasing us is, family stress and life stress and teenagers and, all the things. And so those cortisol levels are remaining chronically high. And so really the thing that seems to be the most effective to get those back down, and exercise does raise your cortisol level, it's supposed to, and then it comes right back down. People who exercise have a burst of cortisol and then actually
so it's going to stabilize it throughout the day.
It stabilizes and keeps it lower throughout the day.
So is this why they say exercise helps with anxiety? Because it gets the cortisol layers up higher. So I've been really struggling. I've been doing really good the last, I would say, 2, almost 3 weeks now. But I had a life event that caused a lot of stress for me, put in a situation that was very stressful, and I worked myself up for a long time about it. Called my doctor afterwards. I'm like, I didn't realize this was cortisol levels at the beginning. I was like, can you check all my hormones? Something's imbalanced. Something changed. He's like, I have a feeling that's not what it is. Tell me what's your problem. I'm not your therapist, but go ahead and tell me what the problem is if you don't mind telling me. I told him, and he goes, you either need to see a therapist or you need to get back on L-theanine. And so we first, let me say, 24, 40 hours later, we got my results back. Hormones were perfect. Everything was right in line. Taking L-theanine at the beginning of every day
for anxiety
has made everything more manageable. I'm talking about it on social media all the time. May not be for everyone, but before going to the doctor and slapping an antidepressant on it, cortisol, getting that managed is life
huge
changing. And being someone who's ADHD anyway, it has helped me have clearer thoughts. I can make better decisions. I'm more calm. I don't feel like a fiery burst of energy is trying to rip through my body. But it's something that I never really felt before in my 20s and 30s. I mean, this is something that's more the perimenopause that I'm feeling these feelings.
So we do see that so your neurotransmitters, which control the signals bouncing around our brain, are directly affected by this estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And so in perimenopause, that chaotic zone, the brain likes to know what's coming. And we see massive disruptions in our neurotransmitters. So L-theanine, and there's a few. So I work with a holistic psychiatrist for my own life. And, I had a recent life event as well that, 2 kind of back to back, we just had to put my mom into assisted living. That was a huge, with so many kids and not everyone agreeing 100% on when was the right time. And, you can imagine. And then I had some professional stuff going on, as we all do. And I just reached my breaking point. And so, make an emergency appointment, go in, and she was showing me studies of different supplements that have just as good at, short-term treatment of situational anxiety than giving you a benzodiazepine, which I know are addictive. So coming from a history of a family with addiction disorders, I'm not super interested in a benzo.
Same.
Of taking Xanax, you know.
I did it. Well, I take Xanax when I travel to regulate my jet lag.
Yeah.
I went on a 1 week, maybe 5-day trip to Italy, came back. I had the worst withdrawal for 48 hours. I'm never taking this shit again. This is fucking terrible.
That's what I told her.
Like this. I wanted it.
I was it's working temporarily, but then
suicidal.
After when you get back, you never feel like this. It's because you stopped taking that and you're taking it for a whole week, and then now you're not taking it.
And now you're not taking it. Your body's like, wait, where's that love?
Where's that good stuff? But I feel like sometimes just balancing the cortisol levels, getting your estrogen down. The DIM makes a huge difference for me too, because I make so much of it. The DIM is broccoli extract, correct? I don't even know how that works.
Diindolylmethane.
Okay, so how does that actually work?
The studies that I've read, the DIM stands for diindolylmethane. And so the methane comes from cruciferous vegetables. So it's usually Brussels sprouts is where they extract most of it from, but broccoli, Brussels sprouts, things that crunch, right? So this DIM gets extracted, and it somehow shunts the metabolic pathway and the breakdown of estrogen to the reason why they studied it was that women who had diets high in cruciferous vegetables tended to have less invasive breast cancer. And they're like, there's got to be something here. So they started looking at their diets and what phenolic compounds in these foods might. So that's how the whole research around DIM. And they found out that it does tend to shunt in the metabolic pathway of estrogen metabolites into ones less likely to cause breast cancer.
And so less conversion of testosterone to estrogen as well, correct? Or no?
That I haven't seen, but let me go back and look at the data. I don't want to misspeak.
But do you feel like with your patients, are you telling them to take DIM every day or within a week or two?
Not using a lot of DIM. See, most of my patients are coming in, fully menopausal or late perimenopausal.
Okay, so they don't have a lot of high estrogen.
Yeah.
But for me, would you recommend for someone who spikes, right? Because it depends on where I have my test. If I'm getting my blood work, 2 weeks after my period or during my period, right? I have, just like you said, the chart like this. Is it something that, you would recommend to take all the time?
I would probably take it every day. It's not going to hurt. Yeah. It just sometimes the gassy side effects because it is methane.
Interesting. Well, I'm gassy all the time.
Too much DIM.
I take it every day. Just I don't want to take any risks. So
eat a bunch of Brussels sprouts,
Yeah. Well, we eat actually a good amount of greens. Sean eats, well, it doesn't affect you anyway, but yeah, we eat a good amount of greens too. So we do a lot of broccolini, which that doesn't really have a lot of a crunch, but I don't know if broccolini would be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that crunches and is green, you're good to go.
So let's talk about, so we talked a lot about your first book being the Galveston Diet. What is your second book about?
So the second book is called The New Menopause. And, when I started talking about the intersection of menopause and weight gain and body composition changes, I read as many of my DMs and comments on posts as possible.
I was actually surprised that you were in there answering it. I know you said you have someone that helps you with it too.
So we have teams now, but I in the early days, and so everyone was just asking so much about menopause and could this be related and that be related. And I was taught that menopause was hot flashes, bone density takes a hit, and you have some genital urinary system like dry vagina and pain and that kind of stuff. I had no idea that your brain was affected, that your heart was affected, that palpitations were a vasomotor symptom, that your muscles start tanking, and I was like, wait a minute. And so I'm reading all this. I mean, I'm board certified. I get board certified every single year. No one has ever put this information in front of me. I had to go and dig. And so literally, it was a crowdsourced book on people just asking me a ton of questions like frozen shoulder. When I talked about palpitations in menopause, 10 million views. When I talk about frozen shoulder in menopause, 10 million views. And I was like, people they're asking, write a book in the comments.
Those are my symptoms.
Put it all. I'm tired of chasing you all over the internet. Get it in a book. So we went back to the publisher who had done Galveston Diet. And Galveston Diet, this book was born in my head before we even published Galveston Diet. Remember, you write a book and it doesn't get published for 6 to 8 months, right? Or sometimes a year. So Chris and I were hiking. So we have a little place in Telluride condo and we go hiking every summer. And so we're hiking. And I'm just like, menopause. And he goes, honey, write the damn book.
So it just sounds like it's a compiled of all of your Q&As.
Right. And so I go through the history of how did we get here? I go through the history of menopause, how women's health has been treated generationally and throughout time, where the problems are, what the solutions are, where we're heading with new research. And then in the last part is what I call the toolkit. So I go over 70-something symptoms associated with the loss of hormones and how it can affect different parts of your body. And then we talk about solutions, including supplements, nutrition, movement, and HRT, and other pharmacology, so that women have, a kit that they can take to their clinician and say, I've got here. We also have checklists in the back of the book. I really wanted a guide, and New York Times bestseller for now 26 weeks.
Congratulations for
that. There. #1 when it was published. I mean, I was like, whoa, this is what people were looking for.
They want it easy.
And they want it easy.
And then you have
simple cells.
Simple.
When you're like,
Oh, I know that from makeup.
Well, and
But if
half
you
of the book is
expl-
validation.
Yeah, and
right?
if you explain it in a simple way to somebody, like, oh,
And I mean, shout out to Gretchen Lee. She is my collaborator because I'm very clinical, right? I was in academics for 20 years. I write like an asshole. And so she was able to take my words and insert my personality back into it. You know, when I write, it's like, thou shalt not, you know? And so she just kind of spins it back into prose from all the medical, because I'm just a research article, because everything I want to do is evidence-based. And now I have a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people in ABC societies looking and critiquing. So I am like buttoned up.
So how do you manage that? I mean, I do see how you manage on social media. For people who haven't followed you yet, how do you manage when you have a hater? Haters gonna hate.
I have them. I have critics. And I honestly, I just stay focused. I don't acknowledge them as a rule. Sometimes, like today, there was a personal trainer who had she was misinformed about what's happening in perimenopause. So I just did an educational video. She had tagged me and was like wagging her finger and saying, no to something I was saying. And I was like, let's make this a teaching moment so that you can be a better trainer to your clients, right? And so I did a bunch of teaching around that. So that's how I kind of try to handle that end of the world, who's like making claims about hormones when they're playing in a field that they really don't know anything about, you know. But when I have peers who are critiquing what I'm doing, I ask myself, where are they coming from? Mm-hmm. Where were they 5 years ago before Mary Claire was, you know, a social media person? You know, if they had previously controlled the microphone, I realized there's probably some professional jealousy here, and too bad we can't be friends. You know, I try to reach out on the back end and try to collaborate, but most of those people like, no, you know, they are siloed in their whatever.
Sean has a lady that he follows on the education, like she does. It almost seems like a entrepreneurial homeschool mix type thing. And there was a lady just hating on every single one of her posts, and just with a very calm, non-confrontational type attitude. She just said, well, why don't you join me in a live so we can discuss this? She invited the lady on a live.
In a super nice way. Like,
I mean, she wasn't
trying to, it went really
well.
Right.
But, you know, sometimes just talking through, which people have the inability to talk through things these days, which is unfortunate.
Well,
you're right, you're wrong. It's black and white, and there is no in between. Being able to talk through whatever her questions were and answering her questions, and the lady giving her opinion about why she didn't think education should be ran this way or whatever, and then letting her answer to those, they found a more common ground,
right,
where they could agree.
And it's like politics, right? Yeah. So everybody has their
health
opinion,
is kind of
and
like
then when you actually get these two people in a room and let them talk. So usually it's at medical conferences, you know, where I will meet these people who I've seen maybe make a few comments, and then we just start talking, and they're like, "Oh my God." Either I like you, you actually know what you're talking about, and maybe I should reconsider, or I learned something from them. So I'm not perfect, and I'm constantly learning and educating. So I try to look at, when I see the criticism, where are they coming from? Is this personal? And what can I learn from this? And can I make a new friend?
Yeah.
You're also battling an old system.
And
so that's going to be the biggest, not necessarily hater, but
people have been practicing for
defensive.
50 years.
It's like, this is my life. I've been doing this for 50 years, and this is the way.
You know, and what they're saying, and what, like in the New York Times, what was said was that I was making their life harder, and I am. That patients are coming in with all these questions of things they're learning in a book or learning on social media, and it's dragging her down. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to apologize for that.
Yeah. There's always going to be new and better ways to do things.
But this is a function of the medical system.
Also,
I wish she had more time to spend with patients, to be able to, you know, feel like, oh my God, one more thing I have to do, because I did that job. And I was a terrible menopause provider for a long time because I didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah. And full disclosure, I said work out more, eat less. I said try not to take hormones. I said hormones might kill you. I said, you know, all the things that I've had to walk back. And like, this is my letter of apology to all my former patients who I said the things I was taught before I reached outside of the box of my training to learn more.
It's the same thing. That's why writing a book on makeup is so hard, because it changes so often. Mm-hmm. Same thing with medicine. As we get better, and what we said 10 years ago is not what we say today. But if you're
I did not put anything under my eyes because of you
Praise
today.
be. But the ability to evolve and change and be open-minded to try new things that may work better. How
exactly
we as a civilization got where we are with the internet now, right?
Right.
And the way we live our lives is because we tried new things, we evolved, and we adapted. And people just, like you said, some doctors are not willing to adapt. What they've been doing has been working for this long, and this is how it's going to be. And sometimes you have to just step away from that and ignore it, and sometimes take on the challenge and listen, and you could learn something new yourself, you know?
You're battling a tough system too.
It is.
It's, you know, and it was a system that has so much good. And
I agree.
you
I'm
know,
not against medicine
I'm-
at all. Like like,
but
I'm not
here's what I know from the
anti.
bottom of my soul. If we continue the standard advice that has been given to women, they will continue to be in the 25% gender health gap, where they can expect to live a little bit longer than men, but live 25% of that life in poorer health than their male counterparts. We are dying of heart disease more often. We are much more likely to get misdiagnosed in the ER. We're much more likely to die from our first heart attack. We're much more, twice as likely to die from an osteoporotic fracture. We're, these things are preventable. And that is where I want to function is I don't want the path that was set for my grandmother who lived 10 years in a bed with dementia and frailty. That is not, I've told my children, not for mama, here's the permission to like take me to Switzerland or whatever we need to do. I don't want to burden your life with having to care for me like that.
That's what I don't want either. My grandmother had it. My mom ended up dying of cancer, but I could see the signs early on. If it was the cancer in her brain or the dementia, and I don't really know if this is hereditary.
And
it was just
I think
copying
women
the same
deserve
patterns
better than that.
Yeah.
I want to die like my grandfather, like the men in my family who were pretty functional, and then they just kind of die. I don't expect to live forever, but I want to live healthy without loss of independence.
Yeah.
And that is my purpose.
Yeah. Sean's too. That's why he's trying to educate
My
people
purpose too, nowadays.
Is that he wants to teach people how to eat right, exercise.
Still love business, so
Right.
it's
And
business and
keep up with your health because health is
health for sure.
Lifestyle is a huge part of this. And I don't want anyone to take away from this that hormone therapy is the be-all, end-all cure for everything. It is not. And hormone therapy without significant lifestyle focus is likely to lead to much change. It all has to work together.
So are you still seeing patients?
Yes.
And what days
I have
do you
an
see
800
patients on?
person waiting list.
Oh, no.
Typically on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I try to leave weekends because I'm still doing a lot of travel for teaching.
That's what I was wondering. How
teach
did
in
you
medical
know?
schools and residencies. I will take every educational opportunity that I can to educate as much as possible.
Do you have nurse practitioners that you work with that
Yes.
can see your patients that you've trained and that are on
Yes.
board with your
We have 5.
ideas? That's awesome. I'm so proud of you. I met you probably, I don't even know if it was in person or through social media 10 years ago-ish. I know I was at Cameo at Dr. Ross' office when I first heard of you or had met you. But I'm so proud of your success and how far you've come.
you.
And I know how much time and energy all of this takes. And you're rocking it with over 2 million followers and 2 bestsellers. Are they both bestsellers?
Yeah.
And on to your third book. Are you allowed to say what your third book is going to be about?
So the new book is the new perimenopause. So I really want to take a
So for
step
me.
back into the transition and really demystify and explain what's going on and lay out some treatment options so that patients are better informed and really talk about lifestyle, nutrition, so that, the earlier you get started and get on the right path, the less likely menopause is likely to affect you, hit you as hard, and then set you up for the decline as you age.
And then your supplement line too. So what is it called? Is it Pause?
So it's the Pause Nutrition, and
Really good name.
Yeah. So it's Pause with a little apostrophe. So we
That's
tried
a
to
great
make
name.
it like a positive
That's cool.
spin on menopause, and it's a line of nutritional supplements: creatine, some collagen, vitamin D, fiber.
Creatine. Just one quick question on that, the cognition thing. That's why I started taking it, because one of my doctors was on the podcast and I asked him about it. I'm like, hey, I took it when I was a kid, but what do you think about it now? He's like, no, 100%. It's really good to take for, and I probably do more stuff now for mental health and trying to feel good than actually like improve my physical health or get more performance. Like I'm good. I feel fine, but I'm like, can I get a little bit more of an edge? And so like anything I can do
for brain health.
For brain health.
To help that or prevent something from happening or give me more mental energy or better cognition, I'm all for it.
So most of the studies, when I'm looking, everything I do is bent for females, right? And females who are aging. So there's actually really lovely studies done on women in long-term care facilities, getting them up, getting them in the gym at 80, 90, giving them creatine, and it was shown to improve their strength and decrease their frailty.
And keep muscle mass, and then
keep
also
muscle mass. And, I follow Stacey Sims and Gabrielle Lyon, and those are my, like, the goddesses of women's health to me, muscle and bones. And they are both big fans of creatine and quote the studies.
How much should a woman take?
About 5 grams a day.
Oh, same as a guy, huh? So that's like
3 to 5.
Yeah.
So I have them start at about half a scoop. So a scoop for us is 5, and half a scoop because it's a bit for your
What are you
gut
putting
to
it in,
adjust.
water? Or
So
coffee,
I have a little concoction I make in the afternoon, which is my fiber, my collagen, and then I'll dump the creatine in there.
So funny, I didn't hear about creatine.
I take it after I
Only
work
when I
out.
was in high school and all the guys took creatine
Yeah,
in high
yeah,
school.
that's what it's
and I
from.
didn't hear about it for a long time, and then I just recently started hearing about it again, but I didn't really know.
I think the other misconception too is people are like, oh, it's going to make me gain all this water weight. That's where I think women are probably scared.
Initially, you will see, but it's water. Initially,
and it's just a little
you'll
bit though
see,
until you.
you're hydrating.
So, okay, so this was going to ask you, what is creatine? Because it's naturally
So
occurring.
it's going to make me gain weight. I'm like, why would you care how much water your body's holding if it's not
Yeah.
uncomfortable? So it can bloat, and so it does take a bit for the gut to adjust. So I'm like, start slow, and then as tolerated, you can get up to 5 and your gut will adjust.
Yeah.
Same with fiber.
So how can people find you? It sounds like you don't have a social media of choice. You're all over the place. So what is do you have a handle across the board?
Dr. Mary Claire on Instagram and TikTok, which are our two kind of biggest platforms. Dr. Mary Claire Haver on Facebook and YouTube. And then our website is thepauselife.com.
And you should follow her on social media. She does a lot of really good clips. It's no fancy production. It's just her, and it looks like in your kitchen.
Doing
quick
bedroom, in my
Q&As.
pajamas. Yeah.
And like she said, she takes what her clients are asking her in her DMs and addresses it, because if one person's asking, there's probably more people that are, questioning the same thing. So she does short clips, specifically speaking to, I don't know, making up something, cortisol or GLP-1, whatever it is, that I think that's very easy to understand for the person who's not super, brushed up on their knowledge of hormones or menopause. So it is very helpful. And I think for someone like me who's just now starting to go through this, it kind of gives you an idea of what to expect and what to look for. So it's time and when it's happening, and you're not surprised by it like you were.
Right.
And don't label it for something that it isn't, like depression.
Right.
Which is what a lot of people feel like in their mid to late 40s, even early 50s, just, like we said, just go to the doctor, they get an antidepressant, and they don't realize that it's actually menopause.
There's a great study that came out, and it's called I Just Don't Feel It Myself. And they actually looked at that and the prevalence of that exact complaint in perimenopause. And it just rang home so hard, because so many of my patients were coming in midlife and saying those exact words, something's not right. I just don't feel like myself. And now the study is now validating that it's most likely due to the mental health changes in perimenopause.
It's huge. Who would ever thought that would happen?
Yeah, well, the world needs more doctors like you, that's for sure. And then anytime that you can let people know that they don't have to live like this anymore, it's a good thing.
Right.
And create awareness for that. I tell my friends all the time, it's like, if they're over 40 and I'm sitting there talking to them, like, you have no idea. You can fix all your problems. Not all of them, but 99% of them. Yeah. You can definitely improve your life a ton by doing all the stuff
and not
that
just
you
accepting
recommend.
the whole aging.
Yeah. And so again, our grandparents and the older age group says, oh, it's just you're getting old and you sat on the couch and you retire at 65 and then that's it.
But what do you always say? You retire, you sit on the couch, you watch Wheel of Fortune, and you die.
Yeah.
And that's
I
what
watched
we're
my
trying to
grandparents,
prevent.
my dad.
Lazy boys.
Yes. They
The lazy
retired
boy
at
life.
65. I mean, on the day. And then they never really left the house. They just kind of watched TV, and I watched them every year. Like I would go see them,
decline.
and get worse. And 65 is not old. Like you can live
that's
an amazing
9
life.
years away from
But
me.
your paternal grandfather didn't do that. He didn't retire and worked till he was like 90 years old in construction.
And I was like, that's
And
how I
he
want to
still
be.
drives,
Like that's how I
drives
want
down
to
to
be.
Galveston. I mean, 90 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, super with it. Then he finally retired, and that's when
Kinda
lazy boy
started.
life
Yeah.
deteriorating
Yeah.
mentally.
Anyways, it's good information to get out there.
I'm sure we'll be having you back. If
Yeah,
you'll even
I'm
come
sure
back,
too.
once you get it's too big for us. Because I do want to talk about gut microbiome too. I know we're kind of out of time for today, but congratulations to you. And I
Thank
can't wait to see
you.
where you are in another 5 years.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.